Hi guys! So today, well, first, it's been a while since I was last active, and that's because, emotions and stuff like that, and dealing with my boyfriend being away, and that was hard, and dealing with life, and just, yeah, working. Yeah. I did all the research for the specifics of each individual eating disorder, but I left it at my boyfriend's house. So, well, most of the Instagram votes were for overall eating disorder information. So, that's what I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna talk about the 5 main types. There's 3 main types, and then there's 2 other types that are less known. First, there's binge eating disorder, and that's just where people eat emotionally, and they eat so much, the DSM says a binge is just more than what you would normally eat in a short amount of time. I've read on some websites that a binge would be considered over 1,000 calories, but I don't know. I mean, you can get 1,000 calories pretty fast if you just eat, a few bakery items, like 2 cupcakes. So it doesn't necessarily go by the number of calories, but it's by the amount of food that goes into your stomach. And it's only whenever you're feeling a certain emotion, whether that's sad, angry, bored, if you're feeling threatened. I know a lot of people eat whenever they've been abused sexually, and they had the mentality of if they made themselves fat, no one would want to touch them. And that's really sad, but I can see their line of thinking. So yeah, that's binge eating disorder. The next one is bulimia nervosa. That one is where people will binge and then they will find a way to purge. Purging does not only mean vomiting. It can also be purging through exercise, like extreme exercise, or using laxatives, or drinking a whole lot of water afterwards. I'm sure there are other ways that I'm not remembering right now. But yeah, that one is one of the most common ones. Binge is the most common in America. I don't want to say most Americans, but a high percentage struggle with it. And that is why America is so obese right now, because of binge eating disorder. But bulimia, people won't necessarily gain weight or lose weight, because there's the binging and then the purging. But whenever they purge, it can't get all of the food and all of the calories out. So therefore, there's leaving some, and their body's still retaining some nutrition. It's just messing up the electrolytes in their brain really bad. And that's making them feel even sicker and confused, and they really start to lose their teeth, and like esophagus bleeds, and even their sinuses get affected sometimes. Yeah, bulimia nervosa. Third main type is anorexia nervosa. That's pretty well what people tend to think of whenever they hear eating disorder. They think of this really tiny, malnourished person that lives in a hospital because they don't eat. And some of that is true, but also not. Anorexia is just where the person is extremely scared to put on weight, and it can be them being scared that someone won't love them as much, or someone will take advantage of them, or someone can, like, when they restrict, they feel a certain power, a certain control over how much or how little they eat. But yeah, basically, anorexia, you either restrict or you have the subtype, which is binge purge. And that's where you can go like just a binge day and then purge and then restrict. But the binges are not close enough to be considered bulimia or binge eating disorder. And the purges mainly tend to be diuretics and exercise. Okay. The fourth one, this one's known by two things. It used to be known as EDNOS, which was eating disorder not otherwise specified, but now it's considered OSFED, which is other specified feeding or eating disorder. And that just covers like things like pica, where people eat dirt and ice and just random stuff like that. It can be anorexia atypical, which is like binge eating disorder and then they restrict for a while without the purging, but they don't meet the classification of the weight to be considered anorexic by the DSM. There's also, what's this one thing called? It's basically picky eating, but it's not, like, it's extreme picky eating, and they won't allow themselves to eat anything else other than what they're eating now. The fifth one is diabulimia, and that's whenever someone with diabetes type 1 doesn't use their insulin correctly for the purposes of weight loss or weight control. From my understanding, as the insulin drops, like when there's not enough insulin, your body will start to break apart the fats, and that's when you start to become malnourished. And a lot of diabulimics, they also struggle with bulimia, which is where they eat and then they purge in some way. Not using enough insulin could be considered purging. It's very, very dangerous for them, of course, because, blood sugar affects blood pressure affects your heart directly, and it all goes together, and they could get a blood clot in their brain, an aneurysm, and die. Or they could have a stroke, or they could develop so many different problems from it. But yeah, those are the 5 types of eating disorders, just briefly covered with some symptoms. What are those symptoms? I don't know. Anyway, yeah. There we go. The 5 main types of eating disorders explained and simplified. No percentages or statistics or anything like that. Just the overall stuff.